Hi, my name's Lauren, and today I'm going to be discussing suicidality and homicidality. To begin, I would like to talk about suicidality. First, there are two different kinds. So, suicidal ideation, which are just thoughts, no actual plan, just kind of these impending thoughts of wanting to kill yourself. Then there's suicidal intent and plan, which is when the person actually has the means to do it, a plan, and the intent to kill themselves. That can be hiding meds and having a whole stash of meds, buying a gun, um, having a full-on plan that they have in a journal somewhere, having a suicide note. All these things would fall into that. Some warning signs are people being distant, withdrawn, starting to give their possessions away, suffering from depression, anxiety, feeling hopeless, having some kind of traumatic event, um, increased substance use, recent loss, and past suicide attempts, whether they were successful or not. That is suicidality. Next, I want to just kind of quickly touch on homicidality, since in Colorado, the second leading cause of death between 10 and 20-year-olds is suicide. So that, for me, in Colorado is a big thing. But for homicidality, this is the thoughts, intent, tendencies to kill or seriously harm another person. And when it comes to us as counselors, the big thing is we have to call the cops and make a report, as well as contact the person or people that this person has intent to kill, because they have the right to know, and that includes giving them the way that this person would want to harm them. So that is the big thing for homicidality. Next, I just want to touch on self-harm. I know there's a lot of new changes in our field and stuff like that, but self-harm is actually not considered suicidal. This is just a maladaptive coping mechanism that some people have. I've seen lots of people with like cuts all over their arm. That is just their way to cope with stress, trauma, big emotions, all of that. But that would not fall under suicidality. So when you have a client who has cuts all over them, that technically does not mean that they are suicidal. You would have to probe a little more to find that out. So for Colorado, suicide prevention and response models. The first one is the community-based public health model, where there's education, like early screenings, events to kind of spread the word. In Colorado, we have the Winnie wagon, which is a bus that goes around and kind of gives information. It's this big purple bus that goes and, educates schools and goes and parks somewhere, and people can come up and ask questions. They do suicide screenings to people. They, do the needle disposals. The second would be crisis assessment for counselors, assessing risk, building rapport, and creating a plan. We can get into that more when we get in a little deeper. Zero suicide, that's when you go to doctor's visits and stuff like that, and they routinely ask you, like, hey, are you feeling suicidal, and have you fill out a little form. That's for pretty much every doctor's office. I know when I was pregnant, every time I'd go to one of my checkups, I would be asked that. When I go to the doctor, they always ask me or make me fill out a screening. I know hospitals in Colorado, you always get a suicide screening if you are 10 years old and older. And then trainings. There's lots of trainings and stuff that the government in Colorado has. People do. A lot of government workers and hospital facilities are trained a lot. All right, so to get down to specifics for suicide prevention in Colorado, the 4 things that I think are really cool that we do, that I don't know if other places do, but I really appreciate that Colorado does. So around 2018, Governor Polis is a huge advocate for mental health, especially in teens. He initiated the family first model, which is where they gave a lot of parents of teenagers resources and how to spot signs and educated them, so that the first response for suicide prevention was making parents aware of the signs and symptoms, kind of just bringing it to the parents' attention that suicide is very prevalent and a lot of teens struggle from it. So, giving them the resources as well of like, hey, I think my teen's feeling suicidal or having these tendencies. Where do I go? Who do I contact? So it was this huge initiative to kind of help right in home. They gave webinars, education sessions to parents, education through schools for parents. That was a big push around that time because in 2017 to 2018, the rate of suicide in Colorado went up by 25%. Then another big push is in schools. They have been really reinforcing that if peers hear, their friends say, make suicidal statements or any comment that they deem is a little not sitting well with them, that they are required to report. I work with teens of suicide, and this means they contact the Safe to Tell line and say, hey, my friend made this comment. And then the Safe to Tell line will call cops if they deem necessary and have the cops come and do a well visit check and kind of check in. Sometimes the people don't know that their friends tell or stuff like that, but it is a great way to have people kind of checking in and making it aware that, hey, this person said something. It's not sitting right with me. I know who to contact to have them checked in on. Another great thing that Polis did was the I Matter initiative, which is where any student in Colorado automatically gets 6 sessions of therapy for free. There's no requirements. You don't have to pay for it. You just kind of say, hey, I need therapy, or I need a, therapy session, and they get to. With that being said, Polis has lowered the age of consent, of getting treated for mental health without consent by your parents to the age of 12. So that means any kid 12 and older can go and seek mental health therapy without needing your parents to sign off. And the counselor can see them. All right, so I've kind of mentioned a few of these. So the Colorado suicide stats, between 10 to 20, it's the second leading cause of death in Colorado for them. We are the top 10 in nation for suicide, or we're among the top 10. I think we're actually number 3, and maybe even higher for teen suicides. We might be 1 or 2. Even though we have lots of resources, Polis has been doing a lot of things to try to do suicide prevention and stuff like that, but our numbers are just very high. So community-based wise, they have the Office of Behavioral Health Strategies. It's a community-based organization, or it's a government-based organization that does amazing community outreaches. They have events like the Youth Mental Health Summit, which is a once-a-year event where kids from all over, this is kids, teens, and parents come together, and it's like a full 1 to 2 day summit where there is suicide talk, what to do, strategies. They've got mindfulness techniques. They've got therapists coming and doing talks about, suicide prevention, as well as what to do when you have these feelings, and people from grassroots community outreach places coming and talking so that kids know where they can go to get help. I've attached a video that you can watch. I think it's kind of cool to see all these kids get together and kind of discuss suicide openly. And I think that's a big thing that Colorado's doing, is making it very public and aware of this ever-present problem that we have. So kids are openly talking about it in schools. I know that from the demographic I see, they're very open about having feelings and, hey, I'm not feeling safe right now. So I think that's a great initiative that they put in place here. They also have this roadmap to wellness where they have a 5-year plan for all these mental health things. like getting more in-school counselors that deal with suicide. Yeah, just like 5 or 6 different branches of or through this government organization, 5 or 6 different ways to kind of help prevent suicide and lower the rate. So I thought that was really cool. I've attached the link to the roadmap in the PowerPoint. We have several hotlines. My personal favorite, and the one that I know that most of the kids in Colorado use, is the Safe to Tell. You can literally just text someone 24/7, hey, I'm not feeling well, or hey, I'm having these feelings, I'm feeling kind of suicidal, and they will message back and forth. We did run into a few problems where they kind of weren't contacting parents because they didn't have the parents' number, but they can call and get cops to come to check in on the kids, which is the next thing. We have the response team, which I think Colorado is doing a great job with. They are now sending a cop or a paramedic and a behavioral health clinician to scenes where 911, my kid's feeling suicidal, or the kid calls on themselves. Instead of just sending cops, having them pick the kid up and bring him in, they are now having a clinician come in and sit and kind of do crisis management on scene. They can do safety plan, they can get them resources, they can sign them up for therapy sessions, they can do all these things that hospital settings do right there, which is an amazing thing. I know in Denver, it's called the STAR program. It's a paramedic and a clinician that go on scene. In Aurora, it's a cop and a clinician that go on scene, and that they're called co-responders. The crisis response is an ambulance and like not an ambulance. It's a police and somebody from the big hospital down there that responds. It's like the case manager or a crisis intervention clinician. And what's really cool is Adams County and Boulder County have a specific adolescent counselor that responds to teens and adolescent calls. This program has changed a lot and helped a lot. They also have this. It's an M1, which is a mental health hold, where cops, clinicians, and physicians can all put a child that they deem to be an immediate danger to self, immediate danger to others, or gravely disabled and can't take care of themselves. So those are the 3 criteria to be put on an M1 hold, which means you have a 72-hour hold where you have to get a mental evaluation to make sure that you don't need further treatment. These are for people that are not voluntary, that don't want to come and get treatment and help. This is a way to get them to get treatment. For trauma-informed, we, as Colorado, do a lot of specialty trainings and programs, all of the, schools, hospitals, everything. They do trauma-informed, where they do education. You have to get trauma-informed education for most jobs nowadays. And yeah, they have specialty training in hospitals and clinicians. So for disaster mental health, we have this amazing program called Summit Health Partners, where they are like the hub and they send teams to the disasters, and it's 24/7. You kind of just call them in the moment and they'll send a team to come. We also have the Natural Hazard Center in Boulder. There's also a counseling group that specializes with first responders to get them mental health help after a natural disaster or a big, multi-casual incident. So they have special counselors that are there that were trained for first responders, so they get the help they need. So assessing a client's experience of trauma, we're going to move past what Colorado is doing and kind of just a broad scope of this. So the first and foremost, as we've learned in this class, building a rapport and creating a safe environment for the person to talk to. You have to conduct a comprehensive, interview, kind of get all the information you need. use standardized tests like the CSSRS, the Columbia Suicide Severity Scale, rating scale, which I have on the next slide, assessing for trauma, suicide and homicidality, evaluating immediate risk. So does this person have a plan, intent, and means to fulfill the plan? Or is it just a thought or something they kind of, are thinking about, or say, I don't want to live, but that's pretty much all it ends there, versus somebody that says, yeah, I want to kill myself. I'm going to do it March 2nd, with a gun that I have in a lockbox in my house. Assessing risk factors, trauma, loss, all the things we discussed in an earlier slide. And also seeing if they have coping skills. So for those patients that, I kind of want to kill myself, what coping skills do they have? And then creating some new ones if they deem that. Developing a safety plan or crisis intervention plan. So this is a safety plan. This one is more aimed towards children, but it's basically, I have it in another slide, but when I have strong feelings, what do I notice? Things that I can do to help myself, reasons to be safe, things others can do for me, and then people who can help, and then ways to keep my environment safe. So that is what a safety plan looks like. So you can do one of those, and it kind of just reinforces what coping mechanisms they have, who can help them, reasons to be safe, and then, ways to keep my environment safe. It's kind of a way of like, oh, well, I know I need to hide these things from myself or lock them up. So along with that, then if you deem that they really need some more help, you can do a tear-off warning and call the cops, or have them go to the hospital by themselves. And that's where they would get a more thorough crisis intervention counselor to kind of dictate, do we need a safety plan? Do we need to go to inpatient, or do they need intensive outpatient? You also need to provide education, kind of let them know what other options they have, give them resources, and kind of just let them know it's okay to be feeling this and process it with them, and refer them if need be. We want to have our safety plan. So reporting abuse and neglect. Colorado is a mandatory reporter, as we all know. We as counselors are mandatory reporters. So recognizing the signs, physical abuse, unexplained injuries, bruises, burns that they can't explain, emotional abuse, extremely withdrawn, low self-esteem, sexual abuse, kids that are speaking inappropriately about things that they shouldn't know about, fear of specific individuals or specific types of people, neglect, poor hygiene. You can see that they haven't had clean clothes. So first and foremost, if you suspect abuse and neglect in Colorado, you have to call 911. Start the reporting process. For child abuse and neglect, you can call the child abuse and neglect hotline. And then for at-risk and elder abuse, you call a different number, but you need the name. When you call to make a report, you need the name, the child's and adult's name, the address, the what you think is going on, and any other information. And you need the name and age of both the child and the adults. You also need to contact the county that this all happened in. It's confidential and legal. You're covered by state law. You need to document, and there's lots of trainings that you can do to become better equipped for this. So for suicide, when I did my research, there was 3 main trauma modalities. The big one for suicide is CBT, getting reframing those negative thoughts and feelings, using some mindfulness and some amazing coping mechanisms when those feelings do arise. So that was according to O'Riordan, and that is for anyone with suicide attempt recently or just a general suicide. For people with emotion regulation and, bipolar and all that stuff, DBT was recommended by the same group of facilitators. For trauma, Kendall Tackett recommended EDMR because it helps reframe that brain and kind of dig deeper into the trauma and underlying. But for everything, suicide is a broad range, and the modality you use is going to be dependent on why the person committed suicide, what's going on, what's the underlying trauma or issue that caused them to do for SI and HI. So the modality is purely based on you and each person. Okay, so we're gonna do a fun little activity. Right now, I want you to get with a partner, and I want you to practice asking these age groups if they're suicidal. So we've got a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, 13, 17, 30, and 65. I want you to practice using different words and verbiage to ask the same question to all these age groups, because they're gonna differ. You're not gonna ask a 5-year-old the same way you're gonna ask a 65-year-old or a 30-year-old. So that is what I would like you to practice right now. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Have a good day.